Hello, you're here with me, Juliette Bryant, on KindaSound, and I'm super excited to be here with Greg from Sunshine and Green. Welcome to the show.
Hello, welcome to the farm.
Thank you. It's so lovely being here. So I've been buying vegetables from you, and I have to say they're amazing vegetables, really, really beautiful. And I wanted to come and see what you were doing and talk to you about how this started, what inspired you to do what is quite a hard job.
What inspired me to do it? It's a long story. In short, I think farming skipped a generation. I think probably with most of us. My grandparents, one way or another, were involved in growing food,
Yep.
mostly their own, either on a farm or at home. And one of my granddads was a tenant farmer with the council as a part-time thing. So it was always there in the background. I think
Yep.
it's something you just have. One of the main drivers for me is insecurity.
What do you mean by insecurity? Food insecurity.
Well, I mean, I'll start with that, but I think I've had a few experiences where I wasn't able to buy food with money,
Okay.
and it left me thinking, just interesting.
Yeah.
Like a funny perspective when you have loads of money and the person trying to sell you food doesn't have any money, but they don't want to give you the food unless you've got something they want that isn't money.
Okay.
So a few experiences like that, and I was like, this is interesting. I don't like this feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I want to be able to grow my own food.
Yeah.
So that started me looking at it more seriously. So out of like a hobby interest, watching my grandparents, and then this fear. And then I had a few but starting this farm, I had a few mishaps, should we say, some misfortune, and it spurred me on because I thought, well, look, there's a lot of problems in the world, but actually the world's really good.
Yeah.
Because I'm still here, I've made it through these terrible things, and I can't fix the world, but I reckon I can do 4 acres. I think I can probably make it better.
Yeah.
Don't have any money or resources, but I think I can just about handle that. So with all those things in mind, it was like, okay, let's go. Let's just start. And
how old were you when you started this?
this farm I got on in 2020,
Okay.
October 2020. I'd spent 5 years doing a couple of other jobs, one on a conventional dairy farm,
Okay.
which pushed me to organic.
What pushed you to organic from that?
Again, I'm before that I thought organic was a bit of a gimmick.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about it. Completely green. I'd come from a sailing background, and I was like, well, organic just seems like nonsense, but whatever. Without any understanding of what was going on. This dairy farm, small dairy farm, very, very good animal husbandry, quite innovative in a lot of his stuff,
Yep.
but very conventional.
Yep.
And in the spring, my first spring there was a mountain of fertilizer that was as big as a house for a 190-acre farm. Then there were inputs, rolled maize and soy from wherever,
Yep.
probably South America.
Yep.
And then I watched him spray off a pasture to re-drill it. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Because, again, without any experience, I was like, surely you want a mixed pasture which is robust and all this sort of thing. Now I realise that there are some financial constraints that mean you have to re-drill it so that you get exactly the right amount of grass that you can actually measure the growth. But that's a long story. But anyway, with those things in mind, I was like, again, that fear is like, okay, so we're importing the fertiliser, all comes from abroad.
Yep.
The chemicals, don't know where they're from, but I can't make those. I just can't. I don't know how, I'm not a chemist.
Yep.
So that seems pretty insecure.
Yep.
Again, flagging up my own insecurities. I'm like, if I don't have money to buy those things,
Yeah.
I can't produce food. Right. Also, respect to dairy farmers. I love milk and cheese, but what a job. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's smelly and it's rough. So anyway, but before that, I'd been looking at horticulture.
Okay.
I had a little terrace where I grew food and plants and stuff. So I wanted to do that really, and that sort of cemented that year on that farm. So I found a small 30-acre fruit and veg farm in Sussex that was doing the Soil Association Future Growers Scheme, sort of an apprenticeship. Went there, spent 3 years there, was really lucky. My boss, my mentor, very good grower, understated, self-taught, but also the old-fashioned, hard-nosed work ethic. Didn't let you slip. There was a full kind of liberal hippie in him, but if you weren't working, he's cracking the whip.
Yeah.
And angrily, which I rise to. Some people, it's not necessary to be that way. Some people don't like it, but like I enjoyed it. So I got a lot of experience, and I stayed for a third year after the apprenticeship, just to cement it all in, and I got bored. And I was
Why did you get bored?
Because
Because it wasn't your project.
Yeah, exactly. So I knew things, what he was going to tell me to do
Yeah.
before he told me, and it was like autopilot.
Yeah.
Which was good. That's kind of where I wanted to be. Also, I think there's also another thing of I'm scared, because if I leave here, then I'm doing it myself.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know quite what's going to happen. So then my parents had 10 acres in Wickenbrook.
Okay.
So I went there, set up there for about 18 months. Things got rocky there. Family are crazy. Things went wrong. I ended up on my ass with zero and was like, okay, what now?
Yeah.
And that's when I found this place, and was very lucky because it's not quite big enough for what I want to do,
Okay.
but it was a foot in the door.
Yeah.
Like 4 acres, cool. I wonder if they'll let me have it. There was a pile of bricks of an old ruin that burned down, and 4 acres, and it's part of a larger farm, 125 acres.
Wow.
And I was like, well, that's too big, but I wonder if I can just squeeze in. I found it 3 days before the deadline for applications, but luckily the situation I was in at the time allowed me a lot of time to write a business plan. So when they sent me the application form, how much wheat, barley, oilseed and sugar beet do you intend to grow? I said, none. Here's a business model. And also a friend of mine who was a customer at the time, Sally Walker, she's an illustrator, kids illustrator. I asked her to draw a picture.
Lovely.
And I sent that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as much as describing things with words is good, if you send a picture.
A picture tells 1,000 stories, doesn't it?
Well, exactly. So I sat there and literally I came to this field, took a photo, took it to Sally, described what I wanted it to look like in a few years. Sent that.
Amazing.
And
your picture that you sent, where are you at with that now?
Pretty close. We're getting there. I mean, the trees, obviously, they need to establish.
Yep.
There's still pretty much just me here. There's Shelley, who helps packing and deliveries. And we have a bit of seasonal work in the summer, so there needs to be more people. But the barn's there, the tunnels are here, trees are in place. It's just got to fill in.
Yep.
So it's good. I expect it to be here after 1 year.
Okay, and how long is it you've been
5
here?
years.
5. Wow. Okay.
So whatever you do,
Add 5.
it's going to take longer. Yeah, which is something I'm impatient through that anxiety, that insecurity. It's like I need to do this now.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, I'm going to die. Like that's.
Yeah.
It's a demon, but it's a good driving force.
I mean, I think what you're saying is such an important factor, that we've become so reliant on food coming from all over the place, and the ability to go to a shop and purchase food. And then it's what happens if that food chain breaks down, if the delivery breaks down, if there's not enough diesels, if they close things. As you said, if cards get blocked or whatever it may be, that you can't pay for things. Having, I think, even if it's a small amount you're growing in your own space, is such an important thing. And having people like yourself, local producers, that you can go to, that you could barter with, or you could use gold and silver or whatever it may be that you needed to trade to actually have that food security.
Absolutely, yeah. And I almost think of it, the analogy I use for it, and I'm so far away from the goal of the farm being kind of self-reliant. Like, it's a long way. There's a lot. This is too small. There's other elements that need adding to it, etc. But the basic analogy I use is, imagine your farm or your community, whatever, scale it up to whatever size you want, your country, as a castle.
Yep.
That castle comes under siege. The walls are good. No one's getting in. You're safe.
Yep.
But unless you're growing your own food, you're knackered. And that doesn't just mean growing it. That means you've got to have all the systems in place. The water, the seed saving, the fertility, all of these things, as much as in-house. Then you can just sit back and be like, okay, yeah, they'll get bored eventually and go away. You don't need to fight anyone. You're just cool, whatever. I don't care what happens in the world. There is a counter-argument, because I think the global food system is also very important. No one starves today other than political instability. Yeah. It's the politicians that are starving people.
Totally.
Because we have the engineering, we have the shipping, we have the trade agreements. You know, you can buy blueberries now from Peru, which is like, that's mental. It's okay, you can argue there are some bad points on it. I won't eat them, don't do it. But isn't that amazing? The political stability to fly berries from the other side of the world to here and keep them fresh with all the engineering and the science in the middle is a beautiful thing. So,
and the access to all the plant medicines, as in, you know, your ashwagandha and all of these amazing herbal remedies that we can use, so we're not reliant on external sources again, you know, cacao, all these incredible things.
Exactly. And I think so with that in mind, it's like, okay, but you can only have that source of stability if you've got your shit together at home.
It's the foundations, isn't it? You have to have the foundations. It's like Haslow's pyramid of needs, isn't it? You know, you have to have those basic things in place, and then we can pull in the more exotic things and those things, and that's brilliant. But if you've got your water, you know, you're safe, you know, you've got a roof over your head, you're warm, and you have basic food to nourish your body, those are the keys.
Yes, correct. Exactly. So with that mindset, it's like, okay, how do we create that? Because the word sustainable nowadays as well, it comes with this picture of like doing the right thing for the environment. And that's true. That's part of it. But really what sustainable means is, can I do this forever?
Yep.
Is this model, like, can I adapt it little bits here and there, but can I grow food regardless of what's happening in the world economically?
Yep.
You know, environmentally, all of these things, can I still churn out a leak? Yes or no? And at the moment, you look at it, and 2022 is a good example because a particular war started up. Fertilizer prices went up, I think 1,000%.
Wow.
Because they're all imported.
Yeah.
Mine's chicken shit from England. Shipping went up about 5%.
Okay.
So I didn't care.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Don't care. And also I grow green manures. That's fertility. That's on the farm. It doesn't matter. I don't care if the price of oil goes up. Oh well, just... it's right here. So that was like, we're on the right path. And it's just that mindset. Same thing with, I mean, in the news at the moment, the subsidies being cut all of a sudden, which is gross. It shouldn't be done like that. But up until last year, a small farm like this wasn't eligible for subsidies. So we built it without it.
Yep.
And my income is determined by local people.
Yep.
Who tend to live here for a long time, like yourself.
Yep.
And all the communities around that. You're not going, your tastes change. You might buy food from somewhere else occasionally, and the sales will go up and down a little bit here and there. But they can't be taken away like that by a sudden change in government, maybe every 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
And I think that's, again, the sustainability thing. What the government have done is gross, but if you're dependent on something that is that variable, perhaps this is a sign to say, look for a different model.
And as you said, it's that sustainability. That's getting grants from the government is not a sustainable thing, because that is reliant on taxes, all these other things that are so variable. Whereas actually, if you can support yourself, that's the key, isn't it?
It is. And I tell you what, though, this is why it's taken so much longer than I thought. Because it's like, okay, so I had a bit of money that I could put in a seed.
Yeah.
Then you're knackered. It's like, okay, this is grassroots. This is determined by growing a customer base, finding people, having a product that people want to come back and have repeatedly, so that I can do better and offer them more in return, you know, and build this thing. So it takes a lot longer rather than a sweeping grant or subsidy where it's like, here you go, here's some money. But again, that boosts you up and you go, great, we're here, but I haven't got the customers to actually...
to keep you there.
And what if your idea is bad?
Yeah.
You only find out, like, what if I couldn't do this? Like, at least I haven't put in a big grant and subsidy and then it's all wasted. That's just my money. Oh, well, I need to change it. So, again, that's that sustainable mindset. Is like, I would much rather rely on people that I can actually talk to rather than someone sitting in an office somewhere that I have no influence over at all.
The organic thing, I'd like to get into that, because this is such an important thing. So I trained as a nutritionist 22 years ago, and it was when I was pregnant with my first child, and it was such a big thing for me back then. I was like, because I did the training, I saw what pesticides and fungicides and all these things were doing to the human body, let alone the earth. You know, we've got both of these things, and I think, you know, they're such a mirror. The soil is a mirror of our gut. So what we do to the soil, we're doing to our gut, which is our immune system and our whole health. But I became so myopic, so tunneled visioned, everything that my child had was organic. I wouldn't buy anything that wasn't organic.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's like those blinkers get taken off and you go, oh my God, what is going on in the world? How can we be having Roundup sprayed on things that are killing the bees, that are killing, humans? And so the whole organic movement became something that I was very, very passionate about. And 22 years ago, there wasn't a lot of people that were massively passionate. It's so exciting that so many more people are getting it. Getting the need for organic. Tell me a little bit about why. Obviously, you said the dairy farm kind of influenced that, but what for you are the key reasons that you are organic here?
Again, this is a changing and evolving sort of thought. So initially, it was organic offered me a way of producing food that didn't rely on outside inputs.
Yep.
Like it has the potential with the introduction of green manures, in my case animals, in other cases composting, etc. That I don't like the word control, but I have control over that.
Yeah.
I can do it myself or I can find it locally.
So it's more of a closed system.
Yeah, so that was my first thing because of that kind of anxiety around needing to grow food.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. So that's what led me in. I wasn't necessarily anti-chemical. I knew the damage that it could do to soil and the wildlife, but I was like, each of their own, whatever, like do what you want. Until last year, and then things changed slightly. What I've come to realise now is short story on last year, we had a contamination of a herbicide called clopyralid, suspected clopyralid. There's a family of herbicides.
Yeah.
It came in via some manure that I got from a friend. Not his fault. He buys hay from a hay merchant. Some farmer somewhere had gone off label. In essence, this herbicide, it sticks to cellulose in grass. That's how the grass protects itself, so the grass doesn't die, but all the other weeds do.
Yeah.
Cellulose does not break down very well in a ruminant.
Yeah.
You can't compost it. Only really the best place and the only place is soil microbes. So first off, soil health, best way to get rid of this stuff. We'll come to that shortly. But then I realised something because I wanted to report this. I was like, this is bad. At the time, I thought I was going to lose 90% of the year's crops.
Whew.
So not all of them were dying.
Yep.
About 40% were curling up. Some of them like burnt cigarettes. They're horrible. And they just twisted. It's a hormone disrupting herbicide. Doesn't mean it does it to us. That's another subject we'll come to shortly because there's a rabbit hole there.
Yeah.
The Soil Association came and did tests on the plants that weren't affected. So that was brassicas and alliums. They took a load of kale. They came back negative. They didn't have any in.
Yep.
Or at least detectable levels.
Yep.
So they cleared that to be sold organically, which reduced it from 90% to 40%.
Yeah.
So we dodged a bullet there. I reported it anyway. You go to the Health and Safety Executive. You know those guys, HSE. It's like a workplace thing. If you're being beaten up by your boss is a bit of a knob, there's dangerous things going on, or there's chemicals being spread, you go there. It's a government body. You report it.
Yeah.
They have a web page devoted to clopyralid. I think it says aminopyralid on there, specifically this herbicide. So, cool, right, I'll do this. There's a phone number at the bottom. It's the manufacturer of the chemicals. Please report here. You're like, hang on a second. That means there's no way, there's no regulation on this.
Yeah.
We bypass the regulators straight to the source.
Yeah. And they don't have to do anything then. It's reported, but is there any follow-up? Do they have to?
Don't know. Probably not.
Yeah.
Why would they? Now, they came to the farm.
Yep.
They offered me a large sum of money with conditions. So I'll go into that shortly. But when they first arrived, I sort of deliberately led the conversation in a way to get, not to catch them out, but to get
information.
Yeah, so they will tell you the half-life of this chemical. I think it's 7 days, 2 weeks to 50 days.
Yep.
And that is true. So I said, there was a field scientist and a corporate suit that came and said, how did you get to that conclusion? He said, well, what they do is they spray it on the soil.
Yep.
They take that soil into the lab and they monitor how long it takes to go away.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So that's correct then. The half-life, if you spray this on soil...
But it's not on the grass.
Correct. So they said, cool. So...
Where's the evidence for it sprayed on grass?
There is, exactly. And I said, okay, so, but you know that that's not how it's applied in the real world.
Yeah.
In the real world, it's sprayed on grass.
Yeah.
Or food crops. We'll come to that shortly. And so you stating to me that this shouldn't happen because the half-life is this short and this could have been sprayed 10 years ago on hay, maybe. I composted it for a year and it had been eaten by goats and it's still there.
Wow.
You know that because on the HSE website it says problems with manure. And so you're still stating this as the half-life. So either it's incompetent science and you're not checking things properly, or it's corrupt corporate influence. So which one is it? Because it's one or the other.
Cool. What did they say?
Nothing.
So I just want to, just for any listeners who don't fully understand this, the horses eat the hay. So the grass, the hay, the grass crop has been sprayed with this fertilizer, not fertilizer, this herbicide, which kills things like ragwort. Yeah.
So it kills broadleafs.
Okay.
Thistles, docks, maybe ragwort, not sure, but probably. So anything broadleaf. Yeah. Essentially.
So then that crop is then gathered, the hay is then stored, the horses then eat that. You get the manure from the horses, not knowing what they've eaten. That's put on, and then that goes into the soil and causes this problem.
Correct.
Yes, just so everyone knows, because otherwise you might not fully get the picture of what's happening.
Now the applications for it, this is the primary source of damage that you will get on allotments, small farms. There are larger farms that have suffered from this. You probably won't hear from them because they will have signed shut up money.
Yep.
But
like you were offered.
Like I was offered. And you hear about it all the time. People like Charles Dowding, he's had instance of it. He's done videos on it on YouTube, really informative. During last summer, I was watching everything I could find. So yes, primarily it's used on grass, and then it'll come onto your soil through manure. Manure is the best fertilizer. It's nature's fertilizer. It's the one. Animals graze, like there's an ecosystem. Plants take it out of the air, animals eat the plants, they poo on the ground. Perfect. Like that's as nature intended. If
we didn't get in the way with worming pills and
if you didn't shove loads of weird stuff in it.
Exactly.
So for me it was like, okay, this is not good. What do we do about this? How do we, and I had to sort of recover the farm. We'd lost so much.
Yeah.
I sent out an essay to customers, and I think because I had to, I was like, I don't know, I need to say it all.
Yeah.
In detail, and I think for some people it's too much, but fair enough. Like the response I got was heartwarming. Sales went up off the back of it.
Yeah.
I had offers of people volunteering, interest-free loans. Again, like the community support, because people like the food, they care. There's a story behind it, and they're like, great.
And also, you're not trying to cover it up. You're being honest about what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, that really connected me to you through Instagram, Facebook, because I was like, wow, this is amazing seeing the truth and the care that you have. Because you could have just kept it quiet.
And I tell you, there was for a few weeks very challenging sort of internal conversations.
Yeah.
Because you're like, why tell anyone? Like I can just carry on. Like before the Soil Association came to test stuff, I was looking at some of it and I was like, well, it looks fine, but literally next to it there's some plants that look like burnt cigarettes, and you're like, I could sell that, and I know there's a license to use it on these food crops.
Yep.
So it is in the food.
Yep.
And you're like, am I just being stupid? Is this nuts? Like lots of very sensible farmers using these things. I was like, but I don't know, like it just didn't sit well with me.
Yep.
And I've learnt the hard way. I don't know what you were like as a teenager, but I was a dick, and like, it was like just in trouble, hiding things, lying, often, you know, and it doesn't get you anywhere. It's the worst thing ever. And then, you know, like, say 5-6 years ago, there was a traumatic year or so, and I watched a family member lie a lot. And okay, yeah, so family member basically just told a lot of stories that weren't true, and it was like, okay, it was a real changing moment. It was like, okay, so whatever happens, have to just tell the story and be open. And excuse me, a bit out of breath now. What I also realised during that time is there's actually no such thing as a bad event. And so in the moment, it was pretty stressful. It's like I had courgette plants, for example, with quite nice looking courgettes on, but the leaves were twisted and gnarled, and like the growing point sent like burnt cigar. I was like, I can't sell that to anyone. Like, even if they don't care, I'm like, I can't.
Well, I remember you said something about you wouldn't want to eat it, so how could you then sell that on to someone else?
Exactly. So that was my thought process, and I was like, but then I was sitting there in the tractor one day with the topper on, about to go over it and destroy all this stuff, and I'm like, it's pretty heavy.
Just destroying all that food.
Exactly. There's food there, there's money there, there's work there, and it's like, you know, it was just like, what am I doing? Is this the right thing to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, but I'm going to do it, and then if I tell the story as clearly as I can and in detail, we'll see what people say. And again, I wrote that email and I sat there with it for a day, just like, shall I send it? I just went, fuck it.
Yeah.
Send.
Did anyone say, I'll eat it anyway, I don't care? Did anyone message you with that?
A few people, but not many.
Yeah.
And I think they got it. You know, you're buying this stuff. Not everyone's buying it because it's organic.
Yeah.
Like, that's a fact. They buy it because it's good and it's local and whatever, or they just like, I'm doing it. So then organic, I tend to keep quiet a little bit because it comes with the sort of, it's expensive label.
Yeah.
And I don't think it is.
I mean, your vegetables are so reasonable for the quality, the taste, all of it. I think it's such a reasonable price what you're doing.
I hope so. Then that's the plan. It's like, if the plan is that everyone should just have good food.
Totally.
And how I grow it is kind of up to me. And if you want it to be organic, we are. But I think, again, my mindset is, can I do this forever?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
And organic provides me with that. Anyway, it was one of those. So these guys came and they offered me some money. There were conditions. I had to do certain things to get the money, which was destroy all the crops on the farm, grow some cover crops, destroy those, cultivate the ground again, grow more cover crops, and then report back the next year. And I would get it would have taken me about 6 months to get all the money.
Okay.
It wasn't enough to cover the loss, and it wasn't enough. If you want me to lie to people, you're going to have to pay me enough that I can go and live in the South Pacific on an island and never see anyone ever again. Right?
Yeah.
Bottom line, I can't walk around and people are like, oh, it's that guy, he took that money and lied.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry, I'm not built that way. I can't.
Yeah.
I will know.
And that's ultimately it, isn't it? We have to live with our own conscience.
Yeah. Some people don't care, but this is it. And it just wasn't enough money. It wasn't enough money to even change anything on the farm and bring anything to it. It's like, if you're going to come and and also it was very manipulative. The words used were, we've come to this, we're giving you this money, as a gesture of goodwill.
So it's almost like they're trying to say they're doing you a favour when actually it was their toxic waste that poisoned your food.
This is not an admission of fault.
Yeah.
So, okay, why are you offering it to me? Because actually, it wasn't their fault. The label on the bottle of this stuff says the rules. And this chemical, I think, was banned in 2012, but don't quote me on that. 10 years or so ago.
Okay.
Not banned, that's a strong word. Taken off the market.
Yep.
They tightened up the labelling.
Okay.
And brought it back.
Really?
Yeah. Just a change in labelling.
So why was it taken off the market?
Because of this sort of thing.
So surely if it was taken off the market, it shouldn't be on the market now?
They hardened the labelling and they put the responsibility onto the farmer or the grower. So deferred responsibility, basically.
Yeah.
Then there's the question, well, why are you offering money then? Out of the goodness of your own heart. If it's out of the goodness of your own heart, why do I have to shut up? And I did say to the guy, I said, look, you've got two options here. And I sent him an example email, not the one that you got, another one. That was like, we've had a chemical contamination from this chemical. The manufacturers have offered to help. They want to use the farm as a research case to see how we can clean it up quicker. They've offered me financial aid. You can be the good guys. His response was, we don't need your help marketing. Okay, fair enough. I didn't show him the other email.
But then you look at companies like, Monsanto, who are no longer Monsanto. They've been bought out by Bayer, and Roundup, and the use of Roundup in gardens and things like this. And now there are class action cases against Roundup.
Look on the Bayer website. You will be fascinated by again, it's all language. I find the language interesting because they will tell you that these chemicals and these companies, it's about growing food and caring for people. Maybe. And certainly the field scientist that was here, very passionate about food. He loved being here. You could see he was interested in what we're doing. So there is a passion there, but someone pays his mortgage, he's got kids, he's got a car, he's got all this stuff. So, but you look at the language, so Bayer have a page devoted to the court cases you're talking of Roundup. And they list them all. Some of the payouts are in the billions. Quick one on that. How much damage do you have to do to a human being to pay them that much money? Like if I get hit by a car,
you won't get billions.
Might get a couple $100,000. Right. So
the guy who won the initial one, which opened the floodgates, was a gardener.
Yes, in America, wasn't he?
And he had cancer, which was proved to link to his use of Roundup.
They've put it's changing of the labelling, which is, this is my understanding of it, is how they've got away with it. He did receive a payout, that specific guy, but it was also their argument against it was, well, he was using it wrong because he got it on his skin. If you don't get it on your skin, it's fine.
But then how many people are, I know, for example, my in-laws would spray Roundup on their grass, and then they would say, oh, it's fine to go on the grass with the baby, and it's like, we're not coming round if you're spraying that stuff. It's like, we're not putting the children on the grass if you use that. We don't want to be on that grass.
Well, so again, it's that thing of like, I will always be curious, and in this situation with all of these things, this is the lesson I've learned, is that the science isn't necessarily being done as a curious endeavour. Because you could say, these CEOs go to their field scientists, we need you to tell us that the half-life of this stuff is this period of time.
How can that be? What do we need to do to get this result?
Exactly. Rather than, what is the half-life of this stuff in the world in any situation that it might exist? And so it's like, science is great. It's a tool. It's a way of thinking. It's a curious endeavour at the world. What is this? What is going on? But it's being used badly.
Manipulated.
Exactly, which is natural. That's humans. That's what we do. If you look at this Bayer page, it's fascinating because there's a sentence in it. I'll paraphrase it a bit, but it says, we will settle out of court if it is financially advantageous to do so. And which means basically we'll just pay people off. If it looks like
they're going to win,
they're going to fuck us over. And it's written to shareholders, which is when you go, okay, so it's not about food, it's not about caring for people.
It's about the bottom line of money.
It's about shareholder payouts and bonuses, etc. Which, is unfortunately gives this whole game a bad name.
But you look at what they did with seeds, making seeds infertile so that those seeds, Monsanto did this with seeds, didn't they? So that those seeds would only last that one crop, as opposed to then being able to get the seeds from the next plant and then grow, which is what it's meant to be, this ongoing natural evolution.
Yes, it should be. And there's always, the way they've done it, because a lot of their crops are now designed to be resistant to some of the chemicals they use. that I find a bit weird, because it's like, oh, this again, it's that framing of it of, well, if we modify these crops so they're resistant to weed killer, then you can use less. And then it's like, well, actually they're now using more, because you can actually just spray it on the food.
Yeah.
So it's
and what is that then doing to the whole ecosystem? What's it doing to the animals, to the bees, to the birds, to all of the things eating that? And what's it also doing to us?
We don't know.
Exactly.
So another thing I sort of came across last year, the clopyralid thing, I went down a rabbit hole of, when I was questioning destroying the crops.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, is this bad for us?
Yeah.
And I asked, before I finally rejected everything from the company, I said, can you offer me any studies or anything that you have done about the safety of this? I can't remember how I worded it, but the safety of this for human consumption and the environment. The answer was not specifically. It's very hard to do that. You'll have to do your own research. And he put some links up that I could look at. And I was like, okay, well, so you don't know. So I followed the links. I looked at various studies. There were some from around the world on animals, including beagles and eyes, which, again, you read the label on this stuff, causes eye irritation. That's because they put it in the eyes of some dogs and it caused their eyes to sting or like permanently fuck up. So that's pretty gross. There was another study in ruminants in Australia, which again is like, okay, you're determining that this chemical is safe for us to eat by feeding it to a ruminant that doesn't break down the cellulose, so it never actually gets into the animal. It just passes through, attached to the cellulose in the grass. So that's not good. And then I realised this is where I realised why they wanted me to shut up. Because they offered me, and I don't know, but the amount of money they offered for a little farm like this, I suspect was a lot more than other farms would have got, because they probably pay out per acre of what the crop is worth. And I think it's because I had said, well, it's in the food, so I can't sell it as organic. The main usage you'll see of this online, the warnings, come from manure. But there is a license to use it on food crops as a post-emergent. So what that means is the crop is above the ground and growing, and you can spray over the top. And one of the questions I asked the field scientist when he was here, I said, so my kale is not suffering. Grass protects itself by attaching this chemical to the cellulose.
So it's in the structure of the grass.
Does the brassica do the same thing? And he said, I don't know, but it's probably something very similar. I said, okay, so it's in the food. That's where it is. Which means when you spray a crop of, so to give you a rundown, alliums. So if you're eating an allium of any kind in this country, there's a good to fair chance it's been sprayed with this stuff. Brassicas, a lot of salad crops. So lettuces, I don't think are affected by it, and some salad crops are brassicas anyway. There is a license for sugar beet and some cereal crops, though I don't know any cereal farmers that use it, so I don't think it's very common in that setting. I don't know if people use it on beetroot, but perhaps because that is obviously related with sugar beet. So it's in a lot of different. So
a lot of those potential non-organic ones of those things could have. So the alliums, your garlic, your onions, could have this on it.
And like I say, it's sprayed as a post-emergent. So plants will be seedlings. They're growing fast. They're sprayed to kill off the weeds. And so it gets into then the kind of root of it as it grows. Well, it's sprayed on the body of the plant. So I can only, and this is all assumption. Because there's no studies. No one's checked. No. But it's if the grass protects itself in that way, it's likely. The assumption is that other plants do similar. Now, there's a big difference though. So a ruminant can't really, I mean, they do break down cellulose a bit, but you've seen horse poo, there's bits of grass in it, right? It comes out. Grass isn't very digestible, is it? No, hence having cows having stomachs and all this sort of stuff. But there's a difference there in that salad we digest very well.
Yep.
We also cook food.
Yep.
So if you boil a cabbage with clopyralid in, what happens?
Yep.
Does it boil off? Maybe it goes away.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe it just breaks down the structure of the plant and makes it available for you to actually digest and absorb into your body. Don't know.
Yep.
Question mark. Don't know.
Yep.
Don't know. And in a space of ignorance,
Yep.
I don't. Okay, fine. You can use it. You test it first. I will wait. And that is really the history of these products.
And then if you look at that, so we haven't got that evidence, and we look at then disease now, as opposed to disease 50 years ago.
Sure.
We have now 1 in 3 people with cancer. That's the current rate. You know, diabetes, heart disease, all of these things are in such huge proportion. And we think, obviously, our lifestyle has changed quite a lot. But one of the huge things that we don't know about is what are these pesticides, herbicides, fungicides all doing to us?
Correct. Yeah. And the uncomfortable thing is there's no way of finding out because
no one wants to do the studies because it's not going to be in their favour, is it? They're going to.
And it's worse than that. I don't think there's a control group on Earth that you could use that hasn't had it.
Wow.
Right? I mean, you could.
Unless you went to some island, you know, where there were.
You'd have to go to like the inner parts of the Amazon to some uncontacted tribe, but
then we'd be contacting them and we'd be ruining their lovely bubble.
And also the food they eat is different.
Yes.
You need to have to do actual science on that. You need a group you can say these humans have the same diet, but it doesn't include this.
So then you look at the Amish people in America who don't use any pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, no vaccines, none of this, no outside kind of input really. Virtually no cancer, no autism, huge difference medically. So in a way, they are a bit of a control group.
Yeah, for sure. They could be used as that. But you see the big problem with it is it's it's so variable. Diets around the world, and these things are everywhere.
Yeah.
And and the test is use it and find out. So off the back of it, I have a customer who came forward at that point and said that she was raised on a farm back in the 60s, 70s.
Yep.
There was a lot more, strong word, but there was a lot more ignorance around things like this, and farms were just sold stuff and they just used it, they'd get it all over them.
Yep.
She was in her 50s diagnosed with DDT poisoning.
Wow.
And has struggled with a lot of mental health, hormonal problems her whole life.
Yep.
Her children are struggling with things because it's passed on.
Because it's passed down, yeah.
And you go, okay, how many people are like that?
Yeah. I mean, the heavy metal load gets passed down. So whatever our heavy metal load is, gets passed down to our children. And that's, for me, the heavy metals is a big part of, I know it's not necessarily in these sprays, but it's being sprayed in the air, the heavy metal contamination that we have, which is linked to mental health, to breathing problems, to so many problems.
And that's it. You can't pinpoint it as one thing, and that's what gets very difficult.
Yeah.
And again, it just cemented in. I was like, okay, so I wasn't anti-chemicals in food, and now I'm like, I am a bit actually.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
Yeah.
I don't think we should use them. I think you could use them if there was a proper regulatory body actually saying there was, because maybe they are. Maybe some of them aren't, some of them are. I don't want to be that person. Oh, they're all bad, because I don't know.
Yeah.
And
the science isn't there to show you either way whether it is or not.
Correct. And this guy, the corporate suit, he came back to renegotiate because I was just like, no, mate, I'm not.
Yeah.
Not doing it. The next deal was do what you want, but please don't tell anyone about how much money we've offered. And this is, again, I rejected that one. I'm still hesitant to say how much money they've offered.
But I kind of don't think that's relevant in a way. And, the thing that is relevant, I think, is your action and the fact that they've offered anything.
Yeah, and it was... So, the real moment that I rejected the first offer was when in the deal there was all these... The first thing I had to do was destroy all the crops. And So I was on the phone to him and I said, look, I've got Horticultural Society coming next week. So let's say I do what you want and I destroy all the crops. It's July, peak season. Horticultural Society come and I've got nothing here. What do I tell them? Because if I sign this, I can't tell them what's happened.
Yeah. Wow.
Which leaves me with the only option, which is to lie.
Yep. And you then look like you've got shit on your face, really. It's like, why have you got a farm with nothing on it?
Correct. And he said, well, you don't have to lie. I said, well, what's the alternative then? I tell them the truth because I've just signed a piece of paper that says I can't.
Yeah.
He said, well, you'll know how best to communicate that to your customers. And then I think it's probably arrogance, but he sent an email. This is in words with some suggestions, which is, you're doing it to control the weeds. You're taking a year out of growing food because you've got a weed burden. And I was like, okay, so now you've actually given me a lie to tell. You're encouraging me to lie. I was like, I don't care what you offer really, because it's just shit, mate. Like, this isn't how you behave.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not a good person. You're not a good person. You might, and it's weird because, you talk to this guy, and if you met him, you'd be like, oh, he seems all right. Nice enough guy.
But then it's money, isn't it, that controls so much of people's actions. And if you, as you said, if you've got a job and you've got a mortgage and you've got kids and they're going to private school or they're doing their whatever, you've got all these things and all this responsibility. And so suddenly you'll be like, yeah, well, okay, I'll say that. And slowly our morals get eaten away by the need to survive.
Correct.
What we believe is this surviving. Whereas
it's the game. The game is not good. And he expressed a couple of times in different ways that a lot of the decisions were coming from above him. And it was like, and the thing is, it's like, you want to be one of those people above. You can see it, but you're not very good at this. You can't negotiate with someone that has no leverage. I got nothing over you, and you can't win.
Yeah.
So get fucked. That's my answer. Like, who the hell are you? So,
and I think that's a really amazing thing. And then you went on to tackle this yourself. What did you do? What were your solutions on how you've been tackling this?
So I had always built this farm, or the business model side of it, to be able to cope with the hungry gap.
Yep.
So we're in it now. I have 4 or 5 varieties of vegetable on the farm, which is not enough to fill a box. So I have to buy in.
Yep.
There's other local farms that have things that I can use. Then there's stuff that we have in storage, beetroot, etc.
Yep.
Potatoes, carrots we can get locally. They store in the ground. Same with leeks. And that model I built with 2 things in mind: A, the hungry gap, and B, I always knew 4 acres wasn't big enough. But I needed the customer base. Before I took on more land. So there's this sort of weird chicken and egg situation. You're like, okay, I've got to grow. And there's some certain maths behind vegetable production where that in an acre you're not going to earn a living. A cabbage is worth a cabbage. Right? And if you're going to put it onto the market, I'm going to charge more than the supermarkets.
It's not like you can gold plate it and charge a lot more. There's a limit to it, isn't it?
Exactly. If I wanted to make a living off just 4 acres, I'd have to charge you 15 quid a cabbage, and no one's buying it. I don't go in. So I had to expand the farm without expanding the farm. In the summer, we're down to like 2 things bought in: potatoes and carrots. The rest of it, and they're all just down the road from a farm in near Ipswich. Okay. Everything's from here. From early to mid-June. Now, we were just about to go into that period, so it's like, great, and it's a real struggle. The next, from where we are now in March through to then, is...
So March to the beginning of June is hard work.
It's really difficult because, like I say, we're leaning on other farms quite a lot, and it's really challenging. But I built the model with that in mind. It's like, okay, so I don't like survival mode, but it is kind of like,
let's get through it.
This isn't where we earn our investment. This is where we make it to that point where we can do well. And so the whole thing had been built around that, and this mindset of, if other people make money selling produce grown by someone else, then I can make money growing my own. So with those 2 thoughts, it's like, okay, we'll position ourselves there. So when this happened, it was like, shit, we're not going to make any money this year. Like, investment is going to stall. And what was really frustrating, actually, the bit that was the real tearjerker is, like I say, 4 years, first 2 years, my own money, working full time at another job to subsidise this. Then there was like a year and a half where I was working part time somewhere else to pay my bills, but the business was standalone doing its thing. Last year was like, great. First year, we're actually going to make a bit of money. I can pay myself a salary, be here full time, and put some money back into the farm. And it was like, cool. And it was like, no, that's gone.
Oh no.
That's another year we're going to miss.
Wow.
Managed to figure it out and get a new tunnel built. So the only thing we're missing are chickens. That bit was missed out on. But there was enough to wiggle through and get that thing built. But it was a bit of a shocker because, like, okay, we're going to carry on for another few months on survival mode. And it was like, even if I put crops in the ground now and pulled up some areas of cover crop that weren't intended to be used until this year, but they hadn't had any weed killer on them. So it's like, great, we can use that, can go in there, get some stuff in, but there's still a lag time. I sow the seeds now in June, can plant them in July. They're not going to be ready until September, October. So that's the whole season gone. And then it's relatively low value crops like kale, cabbages, things like that. And the purple sprouting, we're only eating it now.
I mean, it is delicious. Your purple sprouting broccoli is so good. The mushrooms, leeks, purple sprouting broccoli. Oh, I love it.
And all of that has just been like, okay, well, we've got to wait until next year before we get any return. So, like, that survival mode, fortunately, was there. And it put me in a position of, fuck you, right? Because I was like, I don't need that money. You know, and respect to anyone who has taken a payout from these guys.
Well, they might have to. It might be the only thing they can do to keep afloat, you know.
You know, if you lose a crop, margins are tight. And my margins are really tight in that mine. They're tight all the time. But then it was like, I can get through.
I think that's the difference, isn't it? If you know you can get through, it gives you that leverage to be able to go with your morals. Yeah.
And it gave me a platform of, I quite kind of thrive on things like that. Like, if things go wrong, it's like, okay. Like I said, my boss, who was really hard, my mentor, if he came along and said, you're going too slow, I'm like, fuck you, watch this then. Okay.
So it pushes you on, whereas some people, they would just fold and collapse, but some people need that, like...
I like the pressure, yeah. I mean, in the moment...
Through adversity, you know, light can shine, can't it?
Precisely. And it pushed me on. Like, that summer was great. Once I got over the, like, oh no, what am I doing? It's like, okay, then focus on the solution.
Exactly. I think that's the key, isn't it? If you can have that solution-focused mindset as opposed to just the problem weighing you down, that can change everything.
And all the good that came out of it. You know, like I say, sales went up very quickly. The offers of help from customers, it was like, actually, and this actually brought a new thought to my mind, which we can talk about shortly, but this mindset of, particularly with farmers now, I had a conversation recently at a tenants meeting where everyone was complaining about 1% margins and all this stuff, and I was like, I stood up a little bit angry actually. I was like, find people that care about you. You're selling to these traders, they don't know your name, they don't give a shit. You might grow the best quality wheat in the world, just gets mixed in with all the rest, no one cares. No wonder they're not paying you, they don't care about you. And I said,
they don't know you.
Precisely. I said, my customers last year, I had a shit time of it. I told them, they all came out in support. One person sent an email, just one sentence, you have my loyalty.
Wow.
And you're just like, you know, it's like one of those things, you kind of almost want to cry, but you're like, that's really nice. You don't have
that's
to
actually
say
brought
that.
tears to my eyes, because it is that heartfelt community. I think, you know, one of the things you've touched on with this, for me, is that everyone's looking for community. You know, we've been so stripped of community, and you can see that with social media. It's a way that people are trying to find like-minded people and find community, because our communities in our villages, in our towns have gone. And so I think with something like this, you can feel all that community spirit of people wanting to come together to support each other, because that's humanity, really, ultimately.
It is. And it gives that story again. Like, underdog stories are the best. Whatever film you've ever watched or book you've ever read, it starts with someone in a crap situation and they get out of it. That's the basic premise of every Disney film
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
And you're like, cool, okay, we've got a story to tell.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
What are we gonna, you know? And by the end of the summer, I was like, I wonder what we're gonna be able to tell next year. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what's gonna go right and what's gonna go wrong, because it's the same.
Yeah.
You know, and the social media following has gone from, I think I had like just over 1,000 this time last year, and we're like 8,500 people now.
Amazing.
And you're like, what does that mean? Like, you come out, I've now seen new ways of doing the rotation,
Yeah.
fitting in green manures where I wouldn't have done before, adding fertility to it. Like,
Yeah.
one of the most beautiful things was this, you know, this chemical company, they're one of the largest in the world, a subsidiary of one of the largest in the world. And I was like, so how do I fix this?
Yeah.
And they said, well, you need to grow this cover crop with all these flowers in it. And you're like, okay, so I need to make my soil health better, because that will break down the cellulose
Yeah.
more quickly
Yeah.
and get rid of it. And you're like, okay, so basically the answer is organics. You stand there with these guys and they're like, yeah, cool, all right, well, I'll just do what I would normally do then.
Amazing.
And so it was like, it just cemented it all in. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, so soil health is king.
Yeah.
If you want to use chemicals, your focus should still be
On soil health.
soil health,
Yeah.
primarily, because whatever you then spray on,
Yeah.
it will go away quicker.
So this is an interesting part. So for me, I'm a trustee of a charity, the Vegan Organic Network, and one of their solutions to these problems is obviously stock-free input, and Tolhurst Organic are really pushing this stock-free growing. And I know there are different ways, and you're looking at a different method. And it's interesting to see that there are different ways, because everyone's different, and I think that's what's lovely as well. But one of the things, because we were using manure, I don't eat animals, but never thought about not using manure, because it's like, well, it's amazing. It's free most of the time. Like, why would I not use that to grow my crops? Nothing clicked. And then when I found out about worming pills, this was what did it for me. I didn't know about this at the time. I can't think of what it's called.
Clopyridine.
That's it. But for me, when I heard about worming pills and the fact that those worming pills disrupt the soil, I was like, well, I don't want to use that anymore. I don't want to use, because pretty much everyone's horses are given worming pills. Most animals are given worming pills, which are chemical, which destroy the worms. So what are your thoughts on that part of it?
It's difficult. I mean, horse wormers I've heard are the worst.
Yeah.
I think with a lot of livestock, there's a big difference as well. So a lot of livestock farmers, their margins are very tight.
Yeah.
So there's two types. There's those that have large stocks that will just blanket cover things just in case.
Yep.
Because if stuff gets hold, there's problems.
Exactly.
So they'll and those types of farms, you won't find many of them in this part of the country.
Yep.
Most of the people I know with livestock around here, they don't want to spend the money.
Yep.
So they look for the problems and wait. If they
Yep.
see it, then they'll treat it. There are stuff they'll do in advance just in case, like fly strike with sheep. You have to treat it.
Yep.
Because being eaten alive by maggots is just gross, right? Even organics now, they've said, look, they banned this fly strike medication. Like, actually, welfare standards, we've got to do something. There's longer cooling off periods before you can sell that meat.
Yep.
But anyway, so there are techniques. This guy near here that I know he grows some herbal lays,
Yep.
which are a lot of broadleaf flowering plants, legumes, things like this. They have a lot of properties in them that will protect
Yep.
protect livestock from parasites. Not only that, but a sensible and fairly long grazing rotation. So you move, as in animals in the wild, grazing animals, they don't eat a field to the death. They
No.
move on.
Yeah. And they're not given worming pills.
No. I mean, they have worms, but it's
Yeah.
different. They're not grazing the same ground intensively over and over again between their own poo.
Yeah.
By the time they should come back, the poo's gone.
Yeah.
It's been eaten by the worms and it's
Yeah.
in the soil.
Yeah.
So it can be done right.
Yep.
And if you know people, like I know people where I get my meat from, lady in Poslingford,
Yep.
they won't treat just willy-nilly with antibiotics and things.
Yeah.
Because A, it's a cost. B,
Yeah.
they give the animals the space and the care and the attention that it's not required.
Yeah.
If an animal gets sick, it's like, right, treat it. Sure, you have
It's
to.
a different thing though than a lot of farms, isn't it? Where they are blanket, as you said, blanket treating antibiotics, worming things, all of
Yeah.
these things, which then come into us through the food.
Yeah, and it's I would, I mean, Ian Tolhurst, I've been to his farm, and I've got piles of wood chip up here that I will make into compost. I think they're a really good resource to use on a farm for fertility. They're a bit more sensitive and difficult to use because you have to compost them for the right amount of time before you can use them. Otherwise, they're detrimental. But that's an ongoing process. Again, it's free. Tree surgeons will drop it off if they're nearby and it's not out of the way. So there are advantages to that. On a system in the future, this might take me another 10 years, maybe 5, who knows. But with the right amount of ground, I think the introduction of animals done right, there are cover crops that I have that will go down for extended periods.
Yep.
These could be tailored to be used for hay and silage for a year or so, then grazed for a year or so, and then left alone for a year or so as part of the rotation.
Yep.
By grazing them, means I don't have to drive a tractor around.
Yep.
It offers fertility for the soil because the animals poo all over it.
And it's not poo being brought in; it's in the system already.
Poo that's in the system, and also it provides income for the farm and food.
Yeah.
Like I look at this landscape, and particularly now, if I want to survive here in England, what are you going to eat? Because like I say, I've got a few varieties of veg. We've got stuff in store, roots and things. We can do that, but like there aren't a lot of nut varieties in this country.
No.
We can grow beans and pulses now pretty well.
Yeah.
Like much better than we used to, and you can dry those and store those, sure.
You can grow quinoa now in this country as well,
exactly.
which is a complete protein.
Precisely, but then you look at fat and you go, where's that coming from? Like fat is a real hormone driver.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so
other than your kind of walnuts, which obviously we can grow in this country, things like walnuts.
Yes, they're very challenging. Nuts in this country are like, there's cob nuts, there's hazelnuts, things like that. You can do it, but it's very difficult. Lots of things want to eat them.
Yeah.
Same with a lot of fruit and stuff. But so you have to look at it like that. And I think like on the scale I'm at now, I'd really love to introduce chickens.
Yeah.
They can go on empty veg beds in the winter. They have loads of space. They can do their thing. I have to feed them, but not a lot. I can feed them beans that potentially in the future I can grow or I can source locally. They poo everywhere.
Yeah.
Their house I can take out, compost that, put that on the tomato beds in the summer.
And would you give them, would you plant crops that were kind of natural anti-wormers so you didn't have to give them worming pills?
Yeah, so they would, in the summer months, same principle, I would put them in some of the longer green manures, which are a multiple range of plants. I've had chicory in there, clovers, grass, things like this, and I could tailor that with a bit more. I'd have to do more research, but certainly tailor that for them. So in the summer, that's what they're doing. They're just grazing that, and move them regularly. They're not in the same place for more than a few days. They just graze it down, move on. They'll be eating insects. They'll be eating whatever they want, roaming around, being a chicken. We get eggs. It's cool, perfect. It seems like a fair swap. And I can do that on this scale, and that brings in. I think once we've got chickens, it's like, okay, I'm secure. Right. Like we've got all the fruit and veg.
And then you've got eggs, which is a staple.
Protein, because I can't on this scale, and I talk about scale because scale's important. Like I can't grow enough legumes to eat enough beans. You need an arable farm to do that. And for me, I do grow them, obviously, but to survive,
not to that scale.
And like I say, you need to have these times where the soil has a pasture in it with deep rooting plants to fix the structure. And there's another side to that argument that I think of often is you look at the farms around here. They're very conventional. Excuse me. And if I want to talk to them about what I'm doing here, and to not encourage, but it would be nice to see them doing things in this sort of manner.
To spread it out.
And if you go, well, those cover crops at the moment, they're only being used because there's a government subsidy. And that subsidy won't allow them to put animals on it. But if you put animals on it, you still get the benefits of the cover crop. But you get income for the farm. So you could detach yourself from that government subsidy. And you could be self-reliant and selling good quality food to the people in your village whilst caring for the environment. And I think that's a different conversation then, because you can then encourage best practice, in inverted commas, that without, like, the sustainable farming incentives is what it's called. It's incentives. It's manipulation.
Well, it's the same with this whole regenerative farming movement I've been looking into, and obviously that's using animals. But within that, there is no talk about those animals, what they're eating, like, you know, like the contamination you've had. That's kind of almost seems like that's been left out of this.
It depends who you talk to, and regenerative is a funny place at the moment. I don't know if it's at a crossroads, but on one hand, it's getting a lot of farms are incorporating a lot of organic techniques into their farm models, their farm businesses, which is great, with a blend of conventional as well. Again, the subsidies that are encouraging this, that I think is the problem, because you can just get yourself a no-till drill and use a cover crop every other year and you'll get the money. And it's all focused on getting that money without actually going, why am I doing this? And what are the benefits of it? And that's, you know, I think it's a difficult conversation to have, because you don't want to take those subsidies away, because a lot of farms rely on them. But at the same time, it's like, why you do something is very important. If you're doing it for food production, and again, sustainability means you can't have outside money. It's got to stand on its own. And so if you talk about a farm, it's like, look, I need to be able to raise the income of the farm, the habitat, the wildlife, all the fertility together. Those are this one thing. So regenerative is unregulated. It's not like organic. We've got organic principles. You have to do these things. Cool. You can't use these things. Great. We know where we're at. Regenerative is relatively new, but it's and like I said, I wasn't anti-chemical, and I always thought if there was a way of merging organic and conventional together, because there's a really hard pill to swallow for an organic grower, particularly with fruit. It's less productive, and most of that is down to pests. Nearly all of it. Arable, it's a different story, but with fruit, and you go, oh, that's a real pain, because that's a conversation that you're like, okay, we have to be organic, we have to reduce the amount of food we eat. But then you're like, okay, well, what's is there a compromise? Well, if we knew the chemicals were safe and we could trust the science, sure, we could use some of them. But
is there some kind of my thought is there some kind of natural form that, you know, you could create, like some kind of spray that is made from plants?
Yes, so there are some, and I use a bacteria in the autumn just once on chard and spinach. I have to, because otherwise, is it diamondback caterpillars? There's a caterpillar anyway. It would eat a lot and I'd lose the whole crop. 2 applications, it's gone in a day. It's just a bacteria, lives in the soil. You're just boosting it to kind of like apocalyptic levels for the caterpillars. So there are those. It's
like they're using mushrooms, aren't they, a lot now on different farms to eat up pests and different things.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff. You can use nematodes for slugs. The trouble with a lot of these things is they're determined by the conditions when they're applied. So if you want to use nematodes for slugs in the spring, you've got to have the right moisture content, the right soil temperature, and put this stuff on exactly the right time when the slugs are small, they're parasitic to the slugs. Great. Get that wrong, and it's a very expensive mistake. Now, there is, I've chatted to a conventional strawberry grower and a large organic grower near Ipswich about this, but they're using garlic spray. The active ingredient in that is sulfur, which you can use. I don't know if you can use sulfur on its own in organics, but maybe you used to be able to. It's quite common on fruit. It's really good on mildew. That's why the strawberry grower uses it. He said it's very expensive, but you use it regularly, and it saves a bit of money because he doesn't have to apply the chemicals as often. He still does use the chemicals, just not as much. And then the large grower who does leeks and brassicas mainly in organics, they spray with garlic every week. And I mean, it must cost a fortune. There's questions about where that garlic comes from.
I was about to ask about the where, but because garlic is an amazing medicine. I mean, I use it myself, like for myself on a regular basis, because it's antiviral, it's antibacterial, it's, you know, it's incredible medicine.
Yeah, exactly. So you can use that, and I use nets to protect from insects in the summer, and I was like, what? How are these guys doing this without nets on a big scale? And that's how. It's garlic. You got to use it a lot. You got to go out there. You got to have the tools.
What if you planted garlic with it? Would it
quite
not work?
No,
Not the
not at
companion.
all. No.
It was interesting because I spent a lot of time in India, and there's an amazing permaculture forest garden there. It's called Tanchika. It's a spice farm. And I remember being there, and we were looking at a cacao tree, and there were red ants all over it. And I said to him, I said, the ants damaging the tree? He said, no, the ants are eating the bacteria and the fungus that stops the flowers from growing. And he said, if you leave nature, or if you mimic nature, there's always the solution there, which I thought was so amazing. And then, we were walking around, and he said, we've had a very wet time. And I said, how's that affected you? He said, well, the black pepper's been worse, but the cardamom's been much better. And he said, that's the joys of growing in a permaculture style. I've got 900 odd different crops.
Yeah.
So when one's suffering, another one's flourishing. And I think that's such an amazing thing to look at as well within it all.
This is the point of you're getting rid of the word nature in a way. So I use agroforestry here in that way. There's some certain practicalities where you have to go, right, this bed going to have cabbages in it. I can't allow too many weeds.
Yep.
I can allow a few, but it's got to be for us, kind of.
Yeah.
But I can create ecosystems around that with something like agroforestry that provide a home for predators, for insects, for birds, for anything that will venture out and help, like mitigate the problems we have. And I think that's the mindset as well. It's like, look, we have to compromise. There has to be a shared space here.
Yeah.
And does it work? I think so. If we can balance the whole ecosystem on this scale, probably not. It'll help. But if everyone starts doing something, just that mindset, just think about that, for a second. What the thing that I'm doing now, what's the benefit of it for me, for people, for the wildlife? If you can bring all those together, that's a different thought process. And so agroforestry really helps with that. I think I'm completely biased. I love it. I think it's the answer. Because it doesn't, in my case, again, we did this without subsidies because they weren't available. So it's okay, if I plant trees, I can extend the field margins, which other people get a subsidy for, and I pay for it through the sale of the fruit. Like an apple tree, I think, has over 300 species of insect living in it. Not to mention all the grasses and things below. This will go out in a reel soon as I think about the concise language around it. But it's like, we are currently in the middle of an insect apocalypse. I think some estimates in some areas, the populations have dropped by 76% in 30 years. You don't care because you don't have to clean your windscreen anymore. And you go, well, what's at fault here? And often people will say, well, it's chemicals in agriculture. They might say it's climate change. And those are factors, for sure. Climate change is a funny one when it comes to insects, because you've been to India. I'm assuming you've probably been to the tropics. Insects everywhere. They love it warm and wet. And that's where we're going. So I'm cautious of using that one. Chemicals, sure. Definitely some damage there. But there's one factor above all else that I think has caused the biggest loss.
What's that?
Well, life is very resilient. You can
It's
bash
adaptable,
it around.
totally.
But it needs a place to have babies,
Yep.
stuff to eat, and a place to live.
So it's the destruction of the habitats.
The habitat.
Yeah.
Now this, in this country, was led by government policy. It wasn't farmers that they did the work, but they were paid by the government to rip out the hedges, fill in the ditches, fill in the ponds.
And now they're putting them all back and being paid to put it all back.
If you've ever had anyone or yourself an experience of an abusive partner, that's what they're like.
Yeah.
Do this. No, you're wrong. Do it like this.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, but fuck those guys.
Yeah.
Like, literally. And so, with that in mind, you go, so the habitat's gone. The homes have gone. Sure, if you had an agroforestry set up, you've made these big 100-acre fields effectively smaller. You can make it as efficient as you want to drive your big machines around, even your sprayer, so you don't have to unfold it all the time. And you can spray if you want on the bits where the food is grown. You know, think of that whatever you will. but there's somewhere for the wildlife to live.
Yeah.
You know, you'll have owls flying up and down. You'll have kestrels over it.
Yeah.
You'll have insects in there. You have voles in it. You have animals living there. Put it back.
Yeah.
The numbers will go up. And you can still farm in an efficient way. You could plant fruit trees that you'll get an income from. You could plant, you know, if you were a young farmer taking over a farm, or forget that, you're an old man, you're just about to hand over the farm. Some of those trees could be oaks. That could be your child's pension. 50 years from now, they cut them down, they sell that wood, cool. Plant some more.
Yeah.
Like
but then you think this. So this is one of the things I've always been thinking. It's that guerrilla kind of planting that I've wanted to do, and the transition towns have kind of done it. If every council planted fruit or nut trees, like food, it's food, instead of trees that aren't actually, yes, they're doing something, but they're not producing. You know, you can have a tree that still has the function of a tree, but it's giving you a crop repeatedly without the need to really do anything. Maybe cut it back a little bit sometimes, but you just leave it and it grows. And I think that's somewhere that we've missed. You know, so many orchards in this area, especially in Suffolk, have been destroyed. But actually, if we had that, that's such amazing food. I worked with Sure Start for a while when I lived in Saffron Walden, teaching people, young mums, people who didn't have a lot of money, how to use apples, because they didn't know how to use apples. And they were scared to pick up an apple off the floor because they were worried about the bacteria on it.
Oh, wow,
instead of it coming from a shop wrapped
sure.
in plastic, because we have this detachment from food that is such a massive thing. So for me, you know, we have a friend who bought 10 years ago a 6-acre plot in Malden, ex-agricultural field. It had nothing on it but a dead oak tree. That was it. And it was like, whoa, you know, exposed site. Now, 10 years on, he's done it as a permaculture forest garden. It is incredible, the amount of wildlife, the amount of nature, the amount of food that is produced there. It's beautiful, and it's such a lovely place to go and be, just for for a human as well. It's it's like we destroy nature, but yet nature is one of the places that we can return to balance within ourselves as well.
Yeah, of course.
So I think this merging of food production with actually allowing nature to be is such an important thing.
We have to. And I remember I was on a plane probably 15 years ago, maybe more, and there was a one of the aeroplane magazines, just some crappy magazine.
Yeah.
And in there was an article called Death to Nature, and of course it grabs you and pulls you in.
Yeah.
That's not what the author meant. What he was getting at was the death to the word, because it implies other.
Yeah.
And there is no other.
No.
And it's and again, it's that mindset. You look at it and you're like, okay, we now know, like, we need all these things. It's like cutting your arm off. You're like, well, that's stupid. Why'd you do that? Well, because it keeps doing dumb stuff, like putting cookies in my mouth. Oh, all right. Well, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Stop eating cookies.
Yeah.
But it's like we can do that, and I think you can make it. This is what I really want, because I really would like to merge. Like I always think of it, who has the land now, and where's the biggest opportunity for change? And like you look around, and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You say, okay, but what do they want? What are they doing? Like, because I'm before I went onto that organic farm, I thought long and hard, because I was like, I don't want to be surrounded by ranting hippies. That was my thought. I was like, it's not the environment I want to be in. Telling people they're wrong because of what they're doing, because they're not wrong. Like, these conventional farmers feed everybody.
Yeah.
And to say they're wrong is in itself wrong. And I was like, their task for the last 70 years, grow as much food as you possibly can. Tick, achieved it.
Yeah.
And that's a really positive thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, if you change the mission statement to grow as much food as you can and include wildlife in that, let's do them together, they'll respond.
Yeah.
And I think that's the message. And I know every farmer I know wants to grow lots of food.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't like these SFI subsidies. They like them because they do good things and they see the benefits, kind of, but they're also like, who's going to grow all the food? And you're
And
like,
anyway, it's a bit of greenwashing as well. It's like just doing something for the sake of doing it. On the government's point of view, it's like, oh look, we're doing all these things for the environment.
well, where do carbon credits come from? Farmland.
Yeah.
You can sell. So there's an estate near the A12. They have trees. They get paid money by highways, whoever runs the A12, to offset the carbon on the A12. That's bollocks.
Yeah.
Like, and on paper, you could say, as a government who want net zero, you can say, oh, cool, look, we've planted X amount of trees. We've planted X amount of cover crops,
Yeah.
which equates to X amount of carbon.
Yeah.
We're getting closer to net zero. Meanwhile, food prices go through the roof. That's
And it's
inflation.
not the education, it's not the support of the local communities, the people like you who are doing the amazing work to actually support the environment, on a grassroots, literally grassroots level, a soil level, which is the most important thing.
Sure, and if you take that money away, as we've just found
Yeah.
out, government stopped the subsidy, people go, oh, I'm not using it then.
Yeah.
So it's not incorporated.
No,
By
'cause-
definition, it's not sustainable.
And it's not the intention. I think that's the key, isn't it? It's what is the intention of what we're doing? I think that's what everything
To
comes
get
down
government
to in
money,
life.
right?
Yeah. Whereas actually, if the intention is I want to feed people with healthy food, I want a healthy environment around me, I want, healthy soil, I want to spread that out. For me, that's the thing we should all be focusing on: clean water, clean soil, clean air, and healthy bodies in that process.
And to produce all of those things regardless of what's happening in
Yeah.
the world, whether there's political instability, whether there's climate change,
Yeah.
whatever's going on, I can do this.
Thank you so much for your time. Now, please share with people how they can follow you, because I'm sure everyone's going to want to follow you now that you've shared such incredible information.
Sunshine and Green, that's the Instagram handle. The website is sunshineandgreen.co.uk and it's at Sunshine and Green. That's it.
And so if you're we're here now in Cavendish, which is in Suffolk. So if you live around the Cavendish area and you've not heard of Sunshine and Green, definitely check out Greg's amazing vegetables. It's so beautiful, such lovely food. I highly recommend it. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're really busy, so I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for coming.
Thanks for listening. Take care.
Okay.